Meeting of December 8th of the Michigan Area Council of Governments Policy Board to order. And in front of us, we have our agenda, and roll call is first. So James, if you'll do roll call.
I will. Councilman Mike Belovic. Councilwoman Mandy Campbell.
Here.
District Deputy Commissioner Deitchley. Councilman Dwight Fish. Commissioner Deb Fleming.
Here.
Councilman Doug Graham. Commissioner Carrie Groninger. Councilwoman Lori Hammond.
Present.
Mayor Phil Jenkins.
Here.
District Deputy Commissioner Todd Johnson. Mayor James Mueller. Commissioner Kevin Overmeyer.
Here.
Mayor Rod Robertson.
Here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I got you, Mayor. Thank you.
All right.
Councilman Mark Root. Mayor Mark Center.
Yo.
Morning, Mayor. Mayor Jeremy Stutzman.
Here.
Mayor Joseph Tallmer.
Here virtually.
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioner Susie Wyrick.
Here.
Councilman Ernest Wiggins. And Mayor Dave Wood.
Here.
All right, we do have we have enough members in person to constitute a quorum. We don't have enough members here to allow for online voting. So the members who are online, you're more than welcome to participate in the meeting. We just won't be doing roll call votes, and we won't be counting your votes in the overall decisions. But we do have enough members here in person to have a quorum and just do straight up and down votes today.
Thank you, James. That brings us to our minutes of November 10th. What's the board's pleasure?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Center, second by Jenkins. Any discussion? Hearing none, we have a motion and a second to pass the minutes from November 10th. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And those are passed. Thank you. Next, we come to our reports. Chairman's report, we do need to make a selection for our selection committee for nominees for the calendar year 2022. Historically, everyone in position now has moved up one position. So we'll check in with everybody, make sure that they do want to continue. So as of now, we believe we'll just be looking to select a secretary, but we might have a couple other positions after we talk to everyone. Is there anybody interested in being on the selection committee?
I'll help.
Susie? Phil?
I'll help.
Okay. Susie, Phil, and I'll be the selection committee with James. Appreciate it. Thank you. That brings us to our financial report.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Morning.
You should all have the October financial report. For our fiscal year to date expenses through October, we are at $2,295,688.87. Our cash balance through the end of October was $2,645,459.11. And our total disbursements for the month of October was $373,327.51. Are there any questions over the financial report? If not, I'd like to ask for the board's approval of October 2021 financial report.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the October 2021 financial report. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 And opposed? And the financials are passed. Thank you. Secretary report, James.
Yes, unfortunately, Commissioner Groninger couldn't be here due to a meeting conflict. He did want to make sure that everyone was aware of the administrative modifications that are included in your packet as well. In your packet, there is a schedule for the 2022 Policy Board meetings. You'll note that those will maintain their typical date and time of the second Wednesday of the month at 10 a.m. And that as of right now, the majority of the meetings will continue to be held on 4, because as you know, we've done a little bit of a remodel upstairs. And there's not a conference room on the 11th floor anymore. So this is our conference room. But we will look in 22 to try and see if we can have some meetings, maybe one in each county where we could get out and about. So did want to make sure. You missed the donuts. That is the one challenge in this room is the no food and drink policy. So we will look to see if we can get out and about. So that is noted for 22. Other than that, there's no other report at this time.
Thank you, James. Any old business?
There's no old business today.
All right, let's move into new business.
All right, good morning, everyone.
Morning.
So we have one amendment to our transportation improvement program this month, and it falls under Transportation Resolution 40-21. This is an NDOT-initiated planning and environmental linkage study of US 30 and 31 corridors, and we are adding in preliminary engineering. This study, it will examine mobility, safety, economic development, land use, and other environmental factors. This study will also help inform NDOT of some solutions to concerns with both of these corridors so we can make more informed decisions about future projects. Currently, this is being funded with 100% state funds, but there will be future amendments to add in federal funds. I'm happy to answer any questions on this. If not, I would ask for your approval of Transportation Resolution 40-21.
Do they have to be voted on together?
Yeah, it'll be one item as presented by NDOT. NDOT put the overall study together as one DES number, and the DES number is just a tracking number. So they have put the PEL as both corridors in one project is how they're looking at it. And then just for context for everyone, I think Allie provided some of the brief information on this, but procedurally, NDOT announced back at the beginning of the year that they would be doing the planning and environmental linkage studies for US 30 and 31. The US 30 section, I believe, is about 80 miles, and the US 30 section is about 100 miles. You can see the termini here on 30 is from the Ohio State line to State Road 49. With then the 31 section really being from Tipton to Hamilton County up to US 30 to finish the US 31 project.
James, this is Mayor Tolmer. I understand that as a virtual member today that I'm powerless on this vote, but I would like to ceremoniously make the motion to approve this.
Mayor, we will note your approval of the project, and I understand and appreciate that. Due to our rules, and you know this, but due to our rules here, because we don't have 10 members in the room, we're not able to allow for virtual votes, but we will be able to note your kind of approval in the minutes.
No, I certainly appreciate that, and I also want the board to understand how hard James has worked with our community. We had a public meeting last month where we presented an on-route option through our community, which appears to have gained the most favor. James took the time to come down and sit through our public meeting and field questions, provide the expertise that I think really had a pretty significant impact on the outcome of that meeting. And I just want to thank James and the staff. I know a lot of you have helped on this project. We're just obviously getting started, but this is a big step. This is a huge step. I never, frankly, thought I'd see this quickly, that we'd be considering this at our MPO level. So again, thanks, James, for your help, the staff, and I will sit back here in the electric world, the virtual world, and voice my approval. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll ceremoniously make a motion.
I don't know if I'll be able to vote for this or not in a positive light. We have been discussing US 31 since 2002, 2003. Years ago, there were interchanges planned on 31 at 10, 110, and other interchanges down there. And I think that the US 31 corridor was a lot further than what the US 30 corridor, which has just come on board the last couple of years. I know we've had several discussions with NDOT about US 31. And I don't know if there are projects. I know there is a new interchange going down in Hamilton County at 126th Street. That one's being funded. They just bought the Speedway gas station and they're in the process of, so I don't know if I can go along with this based on, I see the needs on the 31 at several accident points. And unless this Pell study, if projects can be pulled out and be reconsidered, I'm going to have to vote no.
And Commissioner, I understand that, and I know that you've been a strong champion on US 31, especially 31 and State Road 10, as that's been a high collision area.
Well, it's not only a high collision area, but the town of Argus just had a groundbreaking on the 32 new home development down there, and Argus has been waiting for some type of direction on 31 and 10 so the town of Argus can proceed with their continued growth in Argus, and they're kind of at a standstill.
So, along the same lines, I was kind of curious how this changes priorities around 31 and Governor promises to do some different interchanges. Or 10 is a large area of concern for multiple reasons. It's, if you've driven that path, you know how busy it is with or without additional development. I was assuming that this would not provide trade-offs from one road to the next, but maybe I'm wrong. Based on Kevin's comments, I'm concerned now.
No, so Deputy District Commissioner Deitchley, feel free to jump in.
Since we're all looking at you anyway.
I figured that. I was waiting for the opportunity.
Jump in, Matt.
You know, the Pell
Matt,
studies we kind of discussed.
Matt, can I
Yeah.
get you to just
Oh,
pull that
sorry about
microphone
that.
close to you for everybody online?
The Pell studies as we have discussed with Town of Argus and various others, you know, that's the whole process is to get community involvement, stakeholders throughout the process to see what we need to do there. Obviously, we know that the accident challenges on 10 and 110, and that's all going to be considered and part of the process. But it will be a study that will determine what that corridor looks like from beginning to end. So that's ultimately what we're going to be doing.
But didn't we do that already? Didn't we determine that study for US 31?
We had an environmental study. We didn't do it the full-on Pell study, so that's what we're going to do to work on.
Help me with the
next.
difference, please.
Difference is that we're looking at the entire corridor as we've talked about, everything from adding new interchanges to simply doing an expressway. You know, everything from beginning to end will be looked at.
So for example,
So how did the interchange at the Gertog plant in Tipton County, that just sprung up overnight down there?
That's always been funded. So it didn't spring up overnight. And like I said, you know, and I understand there's lots of give and take with 30 and 31 over the last several years. But we have been throughout the process speaking to the locals live. We just had a meeting with Argus 6 months ago to discuss the process for what they're doing. And so whatever they want to do is not going to adversely affect what we want to do. So we're working together on that. But in terms of full-on interchanges or any changes to 31, it's going to happen after the study is complete.
Commissioner Deitchley, just a question that might help ease some folks' fears or concerns. Do you foresee this study having to worry about trading off improvements on US 30 versus 31 as if they were competing projects? Do you see that as a challenge with this study? I mean, obviously here they're shown as the same project, so there might be concerns around having to trade off.
I think that it is entirely too early before the study has even begun to start saying what's going to take the precedent. They're both areas of concern, which is why they're both getting equal studies. So to say that one is going to take favor over the other one is by no means the case. And also way too early to even look at that when the study hasn't started yet.
So why are they being clumped together?
It's just from the DES number perspective, but they will be, we're not looking at 30 and 31 as one project. It's just the way that we're doing the DES number for the actual study.
So perhaps it would be helpful if I provided some context as where we're at in the process and how NDOT is looking to proceed. And you can correct me if I get anything wrong. But from our understanding, NDOT announced this back in March that they would be, well, and actually not just NDOT and the governor announced that they'd be doing these studies on 30 and 31 back in March. NDOT released an RFP, or a request for proposals, in the summer timeframe, I believe around July.
Yep.
The consultants had a number of months to prepare for that. In the original RFP, there was the concept that I believe roughly 4 firms would be selected. My thinking in that, and I could be wrong in that, one would be a lead, but also might do kind of corralling all of those consultants, but that there would be 2 consultants selected kind of per corridor because of the length of the corridors. So if you imagine, you know, there's one consultant that handles 50 miles of 30, another consultant that handles the other 50 miles of 30, and then you have one that handles 40 miles and the last 40 miles of US 31, while then also having one of those be a prime and kind of corralling and making sure that they're looking at all of this in a consistent manner. Those consultant requests were already submitted. I believe you all are finalizing who that would be selected, and then work through scoping, and then in kind of late winter, early spring of next year, really those studies would get started. And that would not just be a spot level of looking at, you know, how we know that US 31 and State Road 10 needs to be an interchange, but also how you handle everything in between State Road 10 and US 30, all of those roadways and those access points, as well as then areas like in Miami County where really more limited information has been done. So while I know there have been step backs here with some funding for specific locations on 31 not moving forward, most notably in this area, 31 and 10, I do feel like this is a higher level of commitment than NDOT has had on either of these corridors, and that with the infrastructure bill, additional funding coming out, 30% additional funding roughly, that hopefully it puts these corridors in top of mind for NDOT as they work on this study to then fund those necessary improvements. It won't stop projects though, like on 31, where they are doing the railroad crossing, the at-grade railroad crossing, where there was a fatality a number of years ago. That is still moving forward. It also won't stop projects that are already in motion, like over by Sweetwater. I can't remember the name over there, that road that is slated to have an interchange as well. So it won't stop those kind of projects that are moving forward. So I don't know if any of that provides any extra context.
They had already started the design of 31 and 10. I think it was CHA that was doing that.
It was the Troyer Group.
Troyer Group.
Yeah. Correct.
They had already started doing the design of that work, and then all of a sudden they were stopped. And how long is this Pell study going to take?
It could be 1 to 2 years. It just depends on the length of the study.
But here's my concern. You know, 3 years from January 1st, there's going to be a new governor, and there could be whole new people at NDOT. And my concern is if we don't have anything by the end of that time, whether it's a DES number or anything, this could, we could be spending $12 million for nothing because the new governor and new NDOT could have a different thought process, and this would never be accomplished then. I think it's very important that this is done within the next 3 years.
And please know that the priorities, while I understand and agree with you that, with the changing of the political landscape, sometimes things do change. But typically, the priorities of NDOT in general, safety, is going to stay in place. And I'll tell you, I don't plan to go anywhere unless they kick me out, so I'll be advocating
And
as
I
well.
understand that, but you have to, I've been here for a number of years, and back when the administration changed after Joe Kernan, myself and the former director of MACOG, Sandy Senor, about Veterans Parkway, we had to go down to NDOT because all of a sudden there was a new NDOT. Well, we didn't know anything about that. So we had to go down and fight to get Veterans Parkway put back in. And that's just, those are my concerns.
I completely understand and respect those concerns.
So I was originally anticipating this in light of the infrastructure bills and as a preparation tool to be ready to go on and shovel ready on a lot of these projects. I'm curious though how likely it is if this gets passed on a $12 million request for 2 corridors, how likely it is to revisit and reboot a study that was already in progress or design that was in progress for 10 as a major concern that's been identified already multiple times from multiple individuals, multiple administrations, to have that project pulled and then now put on hold yet for another 3 years is concerning.
Sure.
How likely is that to be put in despite in tangent with, or however you want to say it, with this study?
So as of right now, that's not in the plans at all. It's the study first, and the study will look at the study results and then decide a plan for moving forward. So to be clear, the 10 interchange or any other interchanges that are not currently farther along the process, like the Tipton one, which was well farther along than anything else, that's why we continue with that. Nothing else is going to, the plan is that nothing will be put in until the study is done and we can look at the results and decide what's next.
How much money was lost on the design by stopping the project for 10?
I don't know that any money would be lost. We haven't thrown all those pieces away. It's something that we actually, like I said, have talked to Argus recently before about here's where we were when we stopped. That's not getting thrown away. It may still be applicable and likely will be applicable when we see the next process after the study's complete. So
Yeah, but in 3 years, the environmental studies and everything that led up to the design and the considerations are going to be warranted unnecessary or unworthy based on time.
The design was not that far along. There, from my understanding, in talking with NDOT and the Troyer Group on State Road 10, that it was probably about somewhere between 10 to 25% design.
That's a fourth of the way then.
Right. But that largely they were probably more towards the 10% side because they had, and I'm not sure if you're able to share this, but they had 20 or 30 different design concepts that they were trying to work through how to whittle that down to 4 or 5 good concepts.
we did have multiple concepts, and we were in process with the talks with Argus to show them some of the examples. They brought us some different ideas, so that we were still very, very early on. We had several ideas, but nothing by any means ready to go.
So I definitely appreciate all that. I was very, very hopeful, considering the year's worth of discussion that went into that 10 interchange, that with the infrastructure bill, we would be able to move forward and be shovel-ready. Now you're telling us that if we vote for this study, it gets completely shelved, or there's no, you're saying there's no trade-off, but clearly there is a trade-off because that project's been stopped until you do the study.
Well, once the Pell was announced, we've had the same. There's never been a conversation about that. Once the Pell was announced, we said all work stops until we finish with the Pell. So we've never said since the Pell was announced that we were going to continue on 10, and then we suddenly pulled it recently for this. It's been since we announced the Pell that was the process.
Commissioner, does this study help NDOT make important decisions for both 30 and 31 to be able to move forward with these projects?
Absolutely. That's where we are right now.
And does this study also help you guys to make sure that you're using the money most efficiently, that since we all have a finite or
That's all part of the
limited
study,
amount?
absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
So my question would be, what's the goal of the study, the outcome? Is it to get it to a certain standard? I'm going to make a plug for our former colleague, Councilman Leatherman, who said that 31 should be an interstate quality freeway from Indianapolis to South Bend.
Sure.
And so the study, in my mind, ought to be to that standard. Maybe 30 has a different standard, but that goal has been what we've been advocating for
Sure.
well over a decade now.
Well, so again, we're not going to take the study and say, here's where we're hoping to get to. We're going to take the study and see where it takes us. That's the process right now. So to say that we are aiming for an expressway, I couldn't possibly say that because the study hasn't begun yet. Is that part of the many things on the table? Absolutely. They're going to look at the entirety of the corridor and see what makes the most sense, what's the right thing for the right amount of money that more importantly focuses on safety.
And Commissioner Deitchley, just to ask a follow-up to Commissioner Wyrick's question. NDOT has the ability to exempt or pull out any area within this study if the need arises.
Yes.
So, for example, as a hypothetical, and I hate dealing in hypotheticals, but as a hypothetical, NDOT makes an evaluation and says that based on the new infrastructure funding, that there is enough funding, 30% more funding, there is enough funding to advance a 31 and 10 interchange as previously envisioned, that it is plausible or possible for NDOT, regardless of this study, to say that we're going to exempt that out of the study and move that forward. A vote for this does not exclude that possibility.
So, yes, that's the last part of what you said is what I really want to highlight. A vote for this does not stop that from happening. But I also want to be abundantly clear and not give any false hope that that's not the plan right now. The plan is to do the study. So, but is that possible? Yes. But I, again, want to be abundantly clear that that is not the goal at this point. The goal is the study.
But I mean, we also know that the president signed a new infrastructure bill just a few weeks ago, and that might change priorities, as what was previously announced back in March didn't necessarily envision a 30% increase to the overall program.
That's true, but to say that NDOT with the new infrastructure bill is flush with cash now is not necessarily accurate at all.
No, but it definitely advances projects that are in out years.
It could. But again, I don't want to give false hope, so it's too early to say beyond that.
The concern seems to be, from what I hear, is the amount of time this is going to take. Is there a way of shortening that period of time if you separated the study?
No, so putting the two studies together on one DES number has nothing to do with speed or, as of right now, it's a 1 to 2 year study is the guess. But we don't have anybody on board yet to start the study yet, so it's too early to say whether we can speed things up, whether it's going to be exactly 2 years. More is to come in the coming months.
And other than Argus, are there other developments that are now having to be halted?
Well, and again, the interchange, when we announced the Pell a year ago, we've had the same, we didn't just recently stop because of this on the agenda
already
today.
it's a year stopped, and then you're talking about 2 more years stopped before we can even start designing again.
I would like to say paused, because that's where we are. We did lose the ground that we gained to that point.
So you announced the Pell a year ago, but you don't know still who's doing the study?
We have to go through the process of request for proposal, and it's a whole normal process of how we acquire the consultants to do the work, name them, and then have them begin the work. So in the coming months, we'll be beginning the work.
And they can't, in fairness, they can't do that until they have the funding.
Correct.
So,
And I think it's a reality that all of our projects easily take 2 to 3 years just to get going. I mean, it's not, nobody's allowed to do anything.
This is not a
immediate.
slow, I know it seems that way. And listen, when I speak to locals and everyone involved, and we say, yes, we'd like to do this project, great, see in 5 years. That's how NDOT unfortunately works. It takes 5 years to develop and deliver a project on the minimum typically. So to do this one, that's about the same thing. We announced it a year ago. We're acquiring someone. It could be 1 to 2 years of the study. It's all part of the project.
James, if I can jump in, obviously I started this discussion with my doing backflips virtually, but, I want to also suggest that, the US 30 Coalition was really not totally thrilled with doing the PEL study. It's a subset of an full environmental impact study, which has federal components. So at the end of the 2 years, this study is going to, as far as we understand, going to make specific recommendations. Then there will be a federal component, several federal components, further engineering and environmental studies before the DES number can be given, before the funds can be earmarked, if you will, for that federally designated project. We would have preferred that they started with the EIS, but this is the way the state chose to go. This is the way NDOT chose to go. I'm not overly thrilled that they've lumped 30 and 31 together because listening to your all's discussions, I certainly understand the frustrations. You know, people ask me how long it's going to take for this US 30 project to occur, and I said, well, US 31 is still going on. And you know, how long's that project been going on? And you all, this is the last segment that is being, I guess, formally considered, if you will, with this study. I think this study is certainly the path forward, but I can't sit here and suggest why there were designs done, who funded them, whether there was an environmental impact study or corridor study that's been shelved. I can't answer that, and I don't know that. But I think the path forward is with this PEL. The other thing that I can tell you is I know in my discussions with Senator Mishler, who holds a pretty significant role at the state with funds, is that he is probably more concerned about getting 31 done than he is 30. Yet he's very excited about, you know, the prospect of getting this 30 project started. So there's certainly advocates to get 31 done, and I can probably safely say Ryan has always said that. So with that being said, if this is the way forward, I think to consider voting against this sets everyone back, and I don't think it's wise at all. Again, I understand the frustrations. I don't know the history of what's been promised, where the funds have come from, who has done what type of environmental studies to get to that point. But I would certainly advocate that this is the step forward. This is requisite to get to the EIS. And I will make a comment. We were told that there were certainly areas that could be carved out. We are right now experiencing that in Allen County with the new Amazon distribution facility. They have accelerated a project. We've been told that they're going to begin an interchange at the new Amazon facility in 2024. And I wouldn't say it's out of the realm of possibility that perhaps this State Road 10 interchange may fit that as well. I certainly only speak as my opinion, but I know that's what's going on US 30. And there has been an area carved out, and I believe they're in the process of an environmental impact study right now to accelerate that. But the funding being available makes this the best time ever to get these projects funded, and this PEL is a critical part of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And I guess to the mayor's point, of the options presented, I don't think that we're necessarily excited about the PEL's timeline as staff, right? We would love to see projects being selected in the TIP and moving forward to construction right now. And I would probably venture to guess, if I could speak for the NDOT district staff, that they would probably feel the same way, that they know that there are safety challenges and they want to address them today, but that with the finite resources that they have available to them, the decisions that are being made, that the PEL is the best of bad alternatives that are being presented to us right now, because it's the PEL, or we reject the PEL, and I don't know what other alternatives are being presented at this time. So I share everyone's sentiment that we wish interchange projects and infrastructure projects on these corridors, especially 31, that has been trying to see freeway upgrades for quite a while, were happening immediately. But of the options available, I think that this is the best option that is available, and that would be kind of our viewpoint as staff.
Hey, James.
Yes, Mayor.
James, listen, and it may be a little bit off topic. I'm not quite sure if this was discussed earlier, but I remember John Leatherman asking me to be, Elkhart to be a part of a study group that was was still constituted for 31 for this, I guess, the advocacy around US 31. And I'm wondering if all of the folk that are online are in that study group, or is that study group meeting? Now, this was before COVID, so I'm not quite sure if folk are still getting together around that.
Yeah, I would say that we have members here in person that represent the US 31 coalition, or that sit on that 31 coalition from the advocacy perspective, as well as then in person and online that represent the US 30 coalition, as both are critically important to all of our communities, and all of our elected officials have felt very passionately about these corridors. So I'd say that there are definitely members here that represent those coalitions.
Well, and I'm wondering whether or not any of the precursor to this information, obviously, I think Joe is right. You know, we need to move forward on this particular study, but I'm wondering if any of this went through that group prior to getting to the point it's at now.
Both coalitions have been advised that these PLs are occurring, and so I would say that they're fully aware of it. It doesn't change.
We're not happy about it.
I was going to say it doesn't. It doesn't change whether or not that is the desired kind of outcome that people wanted to see today. You know, I think if you asked folks on the 31 coalition in our area, 31 and 10 is a must. It needs to be done, and it needs to be done 3 years ago. But that we're not given that choice right now. We're not asked today, based on what INDOT is presenting us, do you want $12 million for the interchange, or do you want $12 million for a PEL? We're being asked, do you want $12 million to do this PEL?
All right. Thanks.
James, if I can also say, you know, again, we weren't happy that it was a PEL. We wanted the EIS to get moving. Obviously, the 30 project is at its beginning. The 31 project is hopefully going to wind down here in the next few years. I will tell you that we are strongly advocating with the potential influx of these federal transportation funds to accelerate this process. And with that Amazon intersection going in, you know, let's get the rest of Allen County done now while there's funds. Amazon's going to put 700 trucks a day on US 30, and you know those adjacent crossings are going to be significantly impacted. So I will tell you, US 30 is advocating that some of this money accelerate these projects, just like you all should be advocating for your US 31 coalition to do the same thing at State Road 10, which I'm sure you are.
We are.
So,
And have.
absolutely. So that's, I mean, we're basically in the same boat, but the time is right to strike with the funds that are available. The fact that the PEL study, at least INDOT has acknowledged that on 30, there is a need to study. And I don't know how they could deny that on 31, there wasn't a need to finish what they started. And I certainly agree with that. And I certainly agree that they need to get 31 done. And I would say almost to the point where before they do anything on 30. But, you know, everyone's got to advocate for their projects, and denying this PEL is not going to help that.
And that's kind of my point, is why are they lumped in together, since US 31 is so much further down the, I'll use the word road as a pun, but, you know, there we have, and we've sent our priorities as a 31 coalition on the interchanges, not anything in between, but we know where the points are that we need at Grissom Air Force Base, because Grissom is becoming an economic vitality down there in Miami County. There's a lot of businesses that's going in at Grissom and at 110 and at 10. And so we know where we want the interchanges. Marshall County, the town of Argus, Fulton County, all passed resolutions on an interchange at 10, interchange at 110, and then a bridge at 700 North, which is just south of the landfill. for the Amish to cross 31, because there are a lot of Amish down there are going from the west side of 31 to the east side and vice versa. So we do have cooperation between the two counties and the town of Argus.
We've had a lot of good discussion on this one. I think that we're getting to the point where we're starting to repeat just a little bit.
Mayor, can
And
I-
hang on, I'm talking right now. But I would like to suggest that we, Susie will have the last comment here, but as we move forward to this vote, I think it's very important that this board consider the fact that we're all elected officials, that we do represent our individual communities. But when we come together on this board, we represent a region, and both these projects benefit the region. And so I'd just like to encourage everybody before they vote to think about that and what your vote means on this board. Susie?
As somebody who's not actually on either of these corridors directly, I was going to head down that path and say that this is definitely a regional opportunity for everybody, and it goes beyond our region into the central area of the state. And as a northern area, we are constantly trying to stay connected to the capital and the hub of our state. But what I was going to ask, and this is, I don't know who to ask this of, actually, whether it's James or you. I think the concern is the coupling of these two studies, and just keep saying that it's just a DES number. It still seems there's trade-offs. I mean, even as we're saying we're not going to trade off, it's happening. And I don't want to vote no on this, because I appreciate the need to move these things forward. And I also appreciate that this is what NDOT is asking for. I don't know if there's an opportunity for us as a board to separate both DES A and DES B somehow, or something along those lines, to highlight the importance of both corridors simultaneously. The way the consultants have been hired, it sounds like they can be separated anyway. There's still going to be a lead that can manage this. I don't know if we have that opportunity to maybe calm some of the fears.
Commissioner.
Susie, I could certainly address that. I know that there are, I believe, 4 firms that have already been named, and it's my understanding that they are not. There's not going to be a firm that's going to have a portion of 31 and 30. They're going to be designated on their corridor, the 4 that there are. You know, the fact that I know, Kevin, I very much understand your concerns. You know, this should have been brought. This PEL on US 31 should have maybe brought a lot sooner than it has. But I can't say why it wasn't. But I can say now that the state is committed to finishing the recommendations for US 31. I do believe, felt the compelling need to study US 30, and felt like now was the time to do this. And they combined them. I don't think there was any reason, any competitiveness. I think it was an administrative simplicity to do it this way rather than to split them up.
And Mayor, that's exactly right. This is, I mean, ultimately this is procedural.
Procedural efficiencies is what
It
I was
is,
gonna
and
say.
so I want to be abundantly clear that the goal of these, I should say these studies, while we are putting them together, is not to take 31 and 30, come together at the end and go, which one should we highlight? Which one should we be the priority? That's not the point of the study. Them being together is simply procedural. They will be looked at as individual corridors, and the need will be for those individual corridors themselves. Now, what happens after that, it depends on what the recommendations are. But it is not a trade-off. It is not a competing
Was going to.
Okay, we have a motion and a second here for the vote. James, did you have a comment?
The only comment I was going to make is that if it provides any clarity or relieves any issue, is that we could list this 2 times in our transportation improvement program. And we would list the same DES number for Pell Study US 30 from 39 to Ohio State line, and Pell Study US 31 from Tipton, Hamilton County line to US 30, there's no issue of splitting that in the transportation improvement program. It's largely just an efficiency in how NDOT went about this with their RFP. Is instead of having two separate requests for proposal processes and two separate things, that everything was, they knew they were doing this all at the same time, so they've just listed these two things together. But if it was the desire, these could be listed separately in our transportation improvement program if that made for easier decision-making. But if the motion on the floor is to vote on it as a whole, that doesn't pose any issue either.
We do have a motion and a second to vote on resolution 40-21. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And that passes unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Allison.
Thank you. Okay, so there's been lots of discussion about this new infrastructure bill, and I know we talked about it last policy board. So I'm going to give kind of a quick overview of the new infrastructure bill, and then I'll hand it over to James, and he can talk about some of the more specifics and what it means for our region. So as we all know, President Biden signed the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act into law. This is a $1.2 trillion act that will reauthorize the nation's surface transportation, drinking water, and wastewater legislation, and then also provide $550 billion in new funding. So essentially, you have two pots of money. You have this roughly $650 billion that's being reauthorized, and then the $550 billion in new funding. And when we talk about these numbers, we're talking about the next 5 fiscal years, so fiscal year 22 to 26. And this first figure here on the screen shows kind of a breakdown of the $550 billion in new funding. And you'll note that about half of this new funding is going to be going to transportation infrastructure. So with this next slide shows a breakdown of the transportation investments, roughly $284 billion. So you'll see that local or roads and bridges receive about $110 billion, transit receives about $39 billion, and rail about $66 billion. And one of the underlying themes that I kind of identified when looking at different analyses of these bills is this new increased emphasis on environmental sustainability. So you'll see in this chart that $8 billion will be dedicated to electric vehicle chargers, and then another $8 billion for electric buses. And this bill also makes major changes to how funds are apportioned or divided up between programs by adding 2 new programs to the core apportion programs. So you'll see at the bottom, there's the carbon reduction program, and then the protect program. So the carbon reduction program creates a new formula program to help reduce transportation emissions. And then the protect program, which stands for promoting resilient operations for transformative, efficient, and cost-saving transportation program. I had to write that down, that's a long one. But this will distribute funding by formula and through competitive grants. So between these 2 new core apportion programs, it's about $14 billion. And then here's a list of just some other apportion programs. One thing I wanted to note here was this 71% increase in transportation alternatives funding, which is largely used for bike and pedestrian facilities. But with this transportation alternatives funding is now equivalent to 10% of the surface transportation block grant. So I thought that was definitely noteworthy. And then finally, I just wanted to highlight some new transportation-focused grant programs. Most of these are pretty self-explanatory in terms of what they fund, but I'm also happy to provide additional information. One program I wanted to highlight was the Rural Surface Transportation Grant Program. So rural is defined as an area outside of an urban area with a population over 200,000 people. And this will fund highway and bridge projects that work to increase connectivity and safety. And this will be an 80-20 funding. But it's important to note with this that no more than 10% of the projects can be used on projects that are less than $25 million. So this is a grant for really big projects. And then two other ones I wanted to highlight was the rail crossing elimination program. So this will work to eliminate highway rail crossings that are frequently blocked by trains and help reduce the impacts that freight movement have on underserved communities. And then also we have the corridor identification and development program, which will help facilitate the development of intercity passenger rail corridors. So kind of the big takeaway, there's a lot of new funding. We're still trying to learn what all this means and learn the specifics of it, but we are here to assist in any way when it comes time, helping you guys apply for any of these grants. We're happy to do. And again, we'll let you know as we learn more information. And then finally, we have a kind of 5-year projection of new funding in our urbanized areas, but I'll let James kind of expand on this one.
Yeah, thanks, Allie. So there's a lot here in the infrastructure bill that we're all still trying to understand what it'll mean from a programming perspective. But as we're starting to get some initial estimates, what we can see within our urbanized area, so MACOG typically on any given year has about $12 million between the two urban areas of South Bend, Mishawaka, and then Elkhart, Goshen. What we're seeing is through a stair-stepped out to 26 is about $2 to $4 million or so of increases depending on the year. When you sum all that together, there's about $16 million or so worth of increases that will just be for urban projects in St. Joe County, South Bend, Mishawaka, Elkhart County, Elkhart, and Goshen. So what does this mean overall to our programs? Is that right now we have projects that are scheduled and planned out through roughly 2028. And so where we see a largest potential is to accelerate projects that are already multiple years out. So projects that are maybe going to start design in 23 might be looking to start design more immediately. And trying to accelerate as many of our existing projects as we can, but then also trying to figure out what kind of new projects we might need to do. This is also going to happen on the rural level. So if you think in any given year, the state has 100 to 200 million in the rural program, a 30% increase there. You're talking about a significant amount of additional funds. So the state is also going to have to work through this for the rural federal aid program. And so what we're suggesting is take a look at your rural program projects to see if there's any way to accelerate those. If you're a county, right now, Allie's been going through all the county asset management plans to make sure that we understand what would need to be done to the existing plans to make sure they're compliant with federal aid standards. And we'll help you make sure that you can get that, because a potential strategy from a county perspective might be to submit during rural calls for bridge deck overlays, as those will not require, say, environmental or right-of-way. And so it might be a great way to improve bridge conditions. So we're looking at that and just trying to figure out the best possible ways to capture additional funds for our region. This is just a traditional kind of program that we maintain. Additionally, as Allie went over, one of the things to note is that under this new program, there will be roughly $100 billion over the next 5 years that will be in discretionary grants that USDOT will run competitive competitions for. And those are some of those opportunities up there. What that means is that we need to start thinking through where our high priority projects fall into these programs. As soon as we have details around these programs, we'll be able to provide more information and try and line up those opportunities. But trying to submit competitive grants for the necessary projects that we have will be a major strategy over the next 5 years. So we look forward to working with all of you on that. I think there will be a number of high priority projects that might be able to be funded through competitive grants. With that, either Allie or myself or anybody, I guess, really on staff can try and answer any of your IIJA. Doesn't have the same ring as FAST or MAP 21. I squared JAA. I don't know what we're going with here, but I guess BID, the bipartisan infrastructure deal. I don't know, but we can try to answer any questions that you might have on this new bill, and we'll continue to provide analysis for you as things come out. If there aren't any questions, and we can move on to other staff updates.
Okay, I just have one final update here. Just wanted to let everyone know that the Community Crossings Matching Grant opens January 3rd, and it'll be open for the entire month of January. December 1st was the deadline for communities to submit an asset management plan to be eligible for this grant. In total, we were able to help 19 different communities with their asset management plans, and then in preparation for that, we tallied it all up and we rated roughly 150 miles of pavement this fall. So that was super exciting. But I guess as exciting as it can be. But when this opens, I am happy to provide any assistance I can, or if you want to reach out, or you or your staff with potential projects that you're thinking about, please feel free to do so.
Allison, can I get clarification on the timing of the Community Crossings grants? How long do you have to close out the projects? Is it 18 months?
It is 18 months.
Okay.
Yes, I know there was some confusion.
DTAC was some confusion. I just want to clarify.
Yeah, so projects from 2020, the first call will need to be closed out.
Thank you.
Yep.
So the timeline, so the application process starts January 3rd. When are projects supposed to be under construction then? Is that for 2023 or?
So it would be within 18 months from the January 3rd call is when you would need to have those projects closed out.
Closed, not under construction.
Correct, closed out. So largely the January 3rd call, I don't know, it's normally announced March?
Something like that.
Something like that, around March. So still, depending on your preparedness for it, definitely from paving could be completed next calendar year.
All right, thank you guys.
Thank you. Next we have Okra and Donnie.
Good morning, everyone. Just wanted to let you all know, I know we've been providing many updates in the last several months in regards to the Indiana Office of Community Rural Affairs. They manage the Community One Block Grant Program. They offer 2 rounds for construction grants, once in the spring and the other in the fall. So right now we're in round 2. Those grants are due December 17th, and we are currently assisting the town of Claypool. So I mentioned this, that come spring 2022, if your communities have interest in improving their water, wastewater infrastructure systems, the rural communities, or even community facilities, feel free to reach out to me or Zach Dribbs, and we'll be glad to help you provide assistance in applying for that grant program. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. A quick update on our regional freight mobility plan. This past couple of months, we've been working through the stakeholder engagement and items like that to collect feedback on what the needs are in our region. We'll be continuing that through the month, and then come January, our consultants are planning to present to Policy Board our regional freight profile and data that's been collected for this plan. In addition, we're also working on kind of an outreach strategy for actually reaching truck drivers in the region and doing a parking study related to that. So we're going to be rolling out a survey as well as advertising at some major gas stations and convenience stores in order to collect feedback that way. because we identified that as a need of what we might be missing for the freight plan.
Last major plan update that we have, I want to make sure that everyone's aware of that MACOG, in partnership with Transpo, will be conducting what we're calling Connect, which is our regional transit plan. This is a document that looks out 10 years to see what types of needs we have on the transit system. So this will be for Transpo and the interurban trolley. We are in the kind of getting everything prepared to go live and public with that. Most of that public work will start in January, but we're making sure through all of our board members, especially ones that are on city councils and county commissioners in St. Joe and Elkhart, that they're making sure that they're letting their boards know and be aware that that study is coming. It's something that doesn't come up all that often in the transit world, about once every 10 years. So it's a great opportunity to really take a deep dive and look at how our transit systems work and where there are opportunities to improve. So we would just ask that you all kind of be involved in understanding that that plan is going to be coming out and be involved in helping us promote that. So I think that's the last plan update that we have for today.
Thank you, James. That brings us to privilege of the floor. Does anybody wish to bring something to the board that was not on the agenda? Okay, I'll close privilege of the floor. Do we have any public comment today, James?
No, we do not.
Okay.
Unless there's anyone here in person. And no.
Okay, great. Thank you.
President, I would just like to congratulate Mr. Turnwald on being nominated to the Penn Harris Madison School Board. Why he would want to do that, I have no idea at this time, but I do know that they will be well served by having James on the board.
Thank you, Mayor. Much appreciated. My why is pretty simple. Graduating classes of 2031, 2033, 2037, and 2040.
From the
Be my simplest answers on why.
From the Penn class of 1986, glad to have you serving our alma mater.
I don't have the math worked out for my children's graduating years, but they're all in PHM, so I'll just call directly whenever I have questions.
Absolutely.
All right, well, thank you all. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
First one is minutes.